Did you find any such inconsistencies in this case?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and what were those?
When I reviewed the reports of the 5 officers that were at the scene, I noticed I became very suspicious because all 5 reports...
Excuse me, I'll object to this personal...
So why didn't you go and interview them for a follow-up?
Because all 5 reports omitted the same information, which was vital to the case.
So why not go ahead and and ask about those omissions?
I felt since they all 5 eliminated the same information that they needed to stand on the integrity of those reports themselves.
And you did not hear him crying from 10 feet away or less feet away? No.
Well, I'm not saying I could hear, I just didn't remember it or gather it as my strongest perception.
Oh, meaning that's why it's not in your report?
Yes.
You testified yesterday that you did not remember Daniel Shaver crying that night, is that correct?
At the moment, I didn't really pay attention to that. I was more focused on Sam's.
And the plaintiffs are very...
Stop it, because that doesn't tell you why the person who's crawling on the floor poses a threat such that the Constitution allows an officer to shoot and kill him. If that person isn't carrying a rifle, that person doesn't really pose a threat, does he?
So as alleged, they...
Answer that question.
But
how did Mr. Shaver pose a threat?
Well, he could have had a concealed weapon on him.
But no effort was made to find out whether he had a concealed weapon, and he sure didn't have a rifle, given how he was dressed.
And you want to bring it to a successful conclusion, and you want to go in there and doing your best to escalate the situation.
Okay. And so are the officers taught that during the trainings, that the objective is usually to de-escalate a situation?
You get that from the academy to the day you retire through continuing education. De-escalation is the mantra of dealing with these types of situations. You're going in there, you go into, when you get calls, law enforcement, they go into problems. And as you go into problems, you want to try to calm the problem down if you can. You're given tools to deal with the situation. You're given training. You're taught to use verbalization, command presence, and all of that in order to control the situation.
Monique, I'm going to record this. My name's Detective Sipe. Okay. Nice to meet you. So I need to ask you a couple of questions.
Okay.
You're not under arrest or anything like that.
I understand.
All right.
I'm pretty scared because I seen everything that happened.
Okay. Were you handcuffed or anything?
I was.
Okay. So tell me what happened tonight. Do you know the guy that was in 502?
I don't know the guy personally. It was just like we're all in here for a training, which was me and Luis and some other people. It was like 9 of us in a group that was in a training today with Paul at Dollar General on Apache Junction.
Okay.
And then we came back to our room like later on tonight. As soon as we were going up to the elevator, we met this guy named Daniel. He said his name was Daniel, the guy that got shot.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, hey, come and have a shot with us, like...
And who did he invite to go to his room?
Me and Luis.
You and Luis?
Yeah.
Was it just you and Luis in the elevator?
No, it was some other lady from Pine Top, but she got off on the 3rd floor.
Okay,
and
so she got off on the 3rd floor, and then you
and then
went...
me and Luis, we were stationed on the 5th floor, and he was also stationed on the 5th floor. So he was more closer to the elevator than we were, because my room was 510 and Luis's room was 512.
Uh-huh.
So we got off with Daniel, and we went in his room, and we were talking. He had like a big, it looked like it, because I used to play orchestra for 4 years, so it looked like a big instrument suitcase.
Uh-huh.
Inside the instrument suitcase was a gun and a dead sparrow, but he told me that it was a rabbit that was in there, just in case it smelled.
Is this a real sparrow?
Yeah, it was. And I looked at it like biblical because I'm Catholic, but I converted into Christian because my husband is Christian. So I was just like, that's not right. Like, why would you kill a sparrow? And so I just went with it, whatever, guys are guys. I just thought it was a part of hunting, whatever. And
did you know it's a sparrow, or did he say it was a sparrow?
He said it was a sparrow. It was a bird. Yeah, it was a dead bird inside. And so, and then he started going on about that he was on a business trip with Walmart, and he was supposed to kill all the birds in Walmart that flew in there with his gun. And so me and Luis were just like, okay, like, you didn't know. And Luis left me up there because I don't know anything about guns, like, I'm clueless or whatever about guns or whatever. I knew it wasn't right, but I stayed in there with Luis because Luis was there, so I felt comfortable. And he's like, oh, I'll be right back. I just need to call my wife. And I was like, okay. So I really thought he was going to come back, and he never came back.
How long was he gone?
He kept coming in and out.
Luis did?
Yeah, and he even held the gun. Like, I was just like, that's not right. Like, you shouldn't put your...
What were they doing with the gun?
They were just, like, looking at it. Like, he was putting... Like, I don't know if... Back in the 80s, like how they had that, the Pictionary thing where, like, you can change the settings on... Yeah. It was, like, they were doing that on the gun. Like, they were just looking at the gun and, like... And I was like, don't point that out the window. Like, I even touched the gun and I said, don't point that out the window. And I got the curtain and I even, like, moved it because I thought about it after a while. And I was
were they pointing at the... Did you see them?
Yeah, they were pointing at the window. And I was just like, don't point at the window. And then, like, I even moved it because I was scared, like, they were going to hurt somebody because everybody was under the influence of alcohol. Because we all took a shot. So I just thought, like...
Was anybody intoxicated, do you think? Or did everybody just have one shot? Or?
No, that guy that you guys shot tonight that is dead, he was intoxicated because he had a big gallon of Bacardi in his hand. Well, like, even when we met him at his door, he was like, you guys want to take a shot? And me and Luis were like, yeah, like, because we were on a business trip and we were going to our room, and we were like, yeah. And so... He invited us into his room, but I didn't take a shot right there. We were just standing there, like, look, I even looked at my surroundings, because I have 6 kids, and I was just like, always look at your surroundings. So I knew it wasn't right, and I just sat right there for a while. But then when I saw them, like, looking at the window and, actually pointing it at the window, I was just like, that's not right. Like, I even pushed it away, but I got the curtain.
Was the window open or closed?
It was open, but it only opens to a certain extent because it
so the glass pane was open, or just
the glass pane was open and the screen was right there where you can feel the wind coming through. But they were still pointing it, and I guess Luis thought about it. He's like, I don't know. He's like, my wife's calling me. I'm gonna call you, or I'm gonna come right back. And so I sat right there for a while.
911 emergency.
Hi, I'm with the La Quinta at 6530 East Superstition Springs Boulevard. And a couple of the guests that come to me, I'm an employee here, they come to me and they told me that somebody's pointing a rifle outside of one of the windows in our building.
Okay, and this is the 6530 East Superstition Springs Boulevard in Mesa?
Yes, it is.
Do we know what he's pointing it at? Do we know what he's pointing the gun at?
We're not sure. They're saying 4th floor.
Okay, one moment here.
That blue one right there? That's what I thought. 5th floor. That's going to be 502. Alright, yeah, I have the room number.
Okay, is anybody injured at this time?
Nobody's injured at the moment, no. We've got some scared people, but...
Okay. What room number?
We believe 502, but... Yeah, that's the room that he's staying in.
Okay. Have you seen the person that's staying in that room? Have you seen the person that's staying in that room?
Yeah, I'm going to double check the map right now to make sure that that's absolutely the room that we're thinking about. But I can get you their name right now.
Okay, and what is their name?
Hey, where's the map? Where's the map of the... You keep showing it to people to show them where to park. Yeah.
Okay, so what is his name?
I have to double check and make sure, because, 502. Okay, his name. Let me sign in to my computer right now. Yeah, Daniel Shaver. His name spelled like it sounds.
S-H-A-V-E-R?
Yeah.
Do we have a date of birth for him?
No.
Have you seen him at all? Have you seen him at all?
Yeah, I've seen him today.
Is he black, white, Hispanic, or native?
He's white. He's a white male, ginger hair.
Okay, hold on one second, officer. Hold on one second. Officers are asking me to confirm where 502 is on, or is in that building. Is it on the north or south side of the building?
It's on the south end of the building, closest to the east side of it.
You said he's a white male. About how old did you say he is?
I'd put him in his late 20s and early 30s.
Okay, what color shirt and pants? I'm sorry, you said you saw him earlier today, correct?
Yes, I did.
And what color shirt and pants was he wearing? Do you remember?
He was wearing a black Tool shirt, like the band Tool.
And what color pants?
Blue jeans.
About how tall would you say he is?
I'd call him about 5'8".
And his weight approximately?
130, 140 pounds, maybe.
And you said he had red hair?
Reddish.
Reddish hair. Any glasses, jewelry, tattoos, facial hair, anything like that for him?
No.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
Does he have a vehicle registered?
Yeah, I don't know if it's registered, but I can find it in the parking lot.
Okay, you know what type of vehicle it is?
I'll recognize it if I see it. I'm headed there right now.
Okay. Only if it's safe for you to do so.
Yeah, it's on the north side of the building, so I think I'm all right.
All right, that'll work.
Clear.
I'm just going to replace that young man with him.
My name is Charles J. Langley.
You were previously employed by whom?
I was previously employed by the Mesa Police Department.
But you have since retired?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Well, I was a law enforcement officer for, I believe, approximately 28 years. I was first sworn in as a federal officer, I believe it was around 1989. I served on the border in the Southwest Division. Specifically, my duty station was Nogales, Arizona. I served there from 1989 until 1994. I had a variety of assignments there. Mostly I dealt with smuggling, dealt with narcotics interdiction, human smuggling interdiction, weapons smuggling, and stolen property and money being smuggled southbound. I did a prostitution detail where they were smuggling women north in order to be utilized as prostitutes. I served on a warrant detail where my duty was to identify and apprehend fugitives or attempting to re-enter the United States or to go southbound into Mexico. Did an extensive detail where I was assigned a steroid interdiction. For a short period of time, I was assigned into Tucson International Airport on a temporary detail where I was assigned to interdict money being transported into the United States through the airlines. This is a brief rundown. My training there was I originally attended the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia, and then, of course, received service training, while I was a federal officer during the period of my service. In 1994, I transitioned to the Mesa Police Department. Served in the Mesa Police Department from 1994 until this year, and until the 21st of last month.
On January 18th of 2016, did you receive a call from the La Quinta Inn?
Yes, I did. I was assigned as a patrol sergeant. The emergency traffic call came out of an individual with a rifle, pointing the rifle out of a fifth-floor hotel room at the La Quinta Inn.
What did you do in response to that call, sir?
Responded there, lights and siren. When I arrived, Officer Gomez was there, and there was also an adult female that was outside that identified herself to me as being a manager, I believe. She stated to me that two of her guests and an employee had stated that there was a subject with a rifle in room 502, as I recall, and that the two guests stated he had been pointing the rifle out the window. They were by the pool area, which was just on the south side of the building.
And what did you do next in response to that information?
Well, I realized at that point I had a hotel very much occupied by civilians, both by staff and by guests. I also had traffic on a very busy thoroughfare, which was Superstition Springs, that was on the south side of that building. And I had a parking lot, which had traffic in it, and I had restaurants that were also in that area, too, that were going to be occupied by civilians. At that time, I decided to form an immediate action team and organize that and respond to the fifth floor of the La Quinta.
What type of threat did you perceive this to be? What level?
Well, this is 2016 in the United States. We have had a variety of active shooters. We've also had people that have gone into public places, as we all know, and have engaged civilians as targets. So I was concerned not only with people in the exterior of the building, because I could possibly had somebody armed with a long gun on the fifth floor, which would be a perfect vantage point in order to shoot innocent people below the building and in the parking lot area and traffic going by. But I also realized that if they did exit the room that they were supposedly in, then I had a variety of targets that are potentially in the occupied hotel rooms and, of course, people in the hallway, people throughout the 5 floors of La Quinta, including staff.
What did you do then?
Formed the immediate action team with the officers that were there and were available. Had a brief conversation with the manager to identify that, yes, we had a weapon involved. It was on the 5th floor of La Quinta, identified the room. 3 civilian witnesses at that point is what I was told we had.
That's probably a better idea.
He was a good intermediate, was we had, but now we get on.
He's on the back side.
Yeah, he came and popped up that window. So, did you, Henderson, go back there? There's a young man standing in the
How many mags have you got on you?
The elevator.
Can I steal one just to throw in my back pocket?
Going up and down, because they're going to lock it. Could you secure that elevator to prevent it from going up and down? I don't want you to go up to the 5th floor in the elevator. Exactly, because that elevator door opens right in front of you. Okay, got it? Okay. We're going to go up. We're going to secure the initial once we hit it. Open this up. We're going to take the 2 sides of it. Okay, and then we're going to go down, and depending on what it looks like, I may drop people off and toast them as we go. Okay?
Using the doorways for cover?
Right. The problem we're going to have is potentially we could have guests coming out behind us. So I may drop somebody off at the elevator, depending on what it looks like. I may drop people off as we're going down that hallway in order to get secure behind us and people coming out behind us. Okay? Make sense? All right. Let's go.
Come on in.
Thank you very much.
Just so you know, I'm positioned out in the parking lot. Get a better angle in that window.
Yeah, that's perfect. Your discretion, and trust that. We're just going to go up there and we're going to just call him out too. A little bit. What was the guy's name again? it opens, go forward and right and left and secure my doorway.
So posted an officer on that side, which I believe is the east side of La Quinta, in order to secure that entry and exit way, and took the rest of the team in the west side elevator to the 5th floor of the La Quinta. I had Officer Cochran with me, Officer Doan, Officer Gomez, and Officer Brailsford, and Officer Elmore. Officer Elmore and Officer Brailsford had their AR-15s with them. I assigned them as the lethal coverage for the team.
And what does that mean? What type of an assignment was that?
That was to protect the team as we moved and when we took position. What I wanted to do was, because we had people occupied in that room, in their rooms, and I was concerned that people would start coming out of the rooms and be potential targets if they were in the hallway walking. So I wanted to position the team so that we could put ourselves between the threat that was room 502 and potentially anybody that would come out of their hotel rooms.
And so how did you so position yourselves?
Did a stack where I had half the team on the south side, the other half on the north side, and we went down the hallway until we were able to take alcoves on the north and the south side of the hallway, move us to the immediate west of the target room.
All right. What did you do next?
At that time, it was just very... What I wanted to do was I wanted to see if they would respond. Wanted to do our best to secure, make sure everybody was safe. So we started making verbal commands to see if I could establish some type of communication and cooperation. Gave verbal commands and received no response. At that time, I sent Officer Cochran downstairs to the lobby in order to use the in-house phone in order to communicate with room 502. Officer Cochran went down there. I also realized that having a little more chance to look at the rooms, that it would be advantageous to have a key card. So I asked for Officer Gomez to also go down so he could immediately get a key card that could be coded for the room and to return with it.
And then what happened?
Officer Cochran communicated to me that he had spoken to an occupant in room 502, and he had, while this is going, actually, sorry, I had to backtrack. Before I sent the officers down, I could hear voices inside the room. When I was giving the verbal commands, I could hear voices. I could hear a female voice and possibly, and I wasn't sure whether it was two male voices. So I had asked Officer Cochran to ask the female to come out first because I knew the female wouldn't match the description of a possible suspect. So that's what I did at that point. Officer Cochran communicated to me via radio that he had made contact and that he had asked for the female to come out first.
What did you know about guns and how many more guns, if any, were in the room?
From the information that we had at that time, I believe that there was a rifle in play. From my experience in training, if there's one weapon involved, there is always a strong likelihood that there is another or more.
We've heard talk about the +1 rule.
Yes.
What was your understanding of that rule based on your training that night?
The rule of thumb is where we have one gun, is highly likely that we're going to find another or more than that.
And does it also relate to searching?
Yes.
And what's that rule, +1 rule, relating to that?
It's the same thing. Where you find one weapon, you're highly likely to find another.
Now, going back in the time, since you knew there had been a weapon in play and people had felt threatened enough to call the police, in your mind, are you believing there are additional weapons?
Yes.
And what did you know, if anything, about whether the suspects had any weapons on them at this time?
Didn't know whether they had weapons or not when they came out.
Occupants of room 502, this is the Mesa Police. Listen to my instructions.
So when you came out of the elevator,
I want the female to step out.
everybody took their positions, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You started screaming,
Occupants of room 502, I want the female to step
right,
out.
towards, in the direction of that room, right, 502?
I would describe it as yelling very loudly to make sure that they heard me.
Okay, so you were yelling very, very loudly, right? hoping that they're going to hear you or expecting them to hear you through the walls and the doors, even though you couldn't even see room 502, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And you raised your voice a few times, right? Understandably.
Occupants of room 502! Listen to my voice so I don't have to send in the dog!
To see if, anybody would react, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Acknowledge me!
There was no reaction from inside the room, correct?
Correct.
All right. So then you had an officer, Officer Cochran, go downstairs to call the room, correct?
Correct.
So you sent away 2 of your people.
Occupants of room 502! This is the Mesa Police!
Downstairs, even though upstairs was this active,
Listen to my instructions!
kind of threatening
It's
situation.
going to become very uncomfortable for you. The female is to step outside of the room.
So when you arrived at this situation, right, already in the back of your mind you're thinking, hey, we've had a lot of active shooters and engaged civilians, as you called them, so you were on heightened alert because of that. Is that right?
Not, how should I explain it? A den itself was just one possibility, but anytime you're dealing with the report confirmed by multiple witnesses that you have a subject with a gun, about equitable.
As you told defense counsel, what you were thinking, right, when you appeared there is that we have had a lot of active shooters who have engaged civilians. So that was in the back of your mind, correct?
Well, the possibility was, yes.
Right. So you already came in kind of thinking that that could be a possibility, right?
Amongst several, yes.
Okay. Even though there were nobody had said that this individual pointed a rifle at particular people. Is that right?
At that point, ma'am, like I said, what I had was suspect pointing a weapon out the window and 3 civilians confirming that he had pointed the weapon out the window. That's what I had.
All right. And actually, one of the civilians didn't see anything. She was told that by the other 2.
I can only go with what limited information I'm given at the time.
Okay. In your report, it says the manager said the suspect had been seen pointing a rifle by 2 guests. So only 2 people had seen him point a rifle, correct?
In this from recollection, I think she mentioned to me that an employee had gone up there and seen a rifle also in the room.
Is that right? That's not in your report anywhere.
I think I did mention it when I arrived. Yes, you're absolutely correct, ma'am. I apologize for that.
All right. So there were no calls about anybody else having seen this rifle?
Correct.
Right?
Yes, 2.
Okay. So there were 2 individuals who said a man was pointing a rifle out the window, right?
Yes.
All right. And so when you were downstairs speaking with the manager, did the manager inform you that they knew this person, the person in that room, what his name was?
The information I gathered, and it may have been related to another officer there, was that he was a guest. There was a guest.
All right. So now you're thinking this could have been an active shooter, even though nobody fired...
It was a possibility
that
it could develop into that. I wanted to be caught.
Right. Even though nobody fired any weapons.
Correct.
Or pointed them at anybody in particular.
Correct.
Or made threats toward anybody.
Correct.
Right. And nobody else besides the 2 individuals downstairs in the spa who had seen this from 4 floors away. Right? Because it was on the 5th floor.
Correct.
Did you ask those 2 individuals if they had been drinking?
No, I did not have contact with them.
So you didn't ask them about that. You obviously, you took it seriously. You thought, oh, these people must be correct. There must be a guy pointing a rifle out the window, correct?
I believe so.
Right. Even though you can't really point a rifle out the window because there was a screen in the window, but you didn't question what they had to say, right?
I didn't have the opportunity to do so.
Okay. Because you did not interview them, or nobody interviewed them thoroughly.
Well,
a little bit.
In this situation, when you had the opportunity, but first we want to do is secure, make sure it wasn't occurring, and nobody was going to be hurt.
Okay. So while you were downstairs, though, nobody called upstairs to room 502 to say, hey, is there a weapon out there by any chance? We got a call that there was, is everybody okay? There was a weapon. Nothing?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. So you did not know, but you didn't have anybody call from downstairs?
Once we were upstairs.
Right. But you didn't have them call from downstairs to ascertain if there was a weapon in the room, if anybody was in danger in the room, any of that? No?
Ma'am, I don't know if it would be...
What's a yes or no answer? Did you...
Hold on. If there was a possibility of a weapon, is not a very, in my mind, a safe practice to call up and say, by the way, it's the police. We have people saying that you may have been pointing a rifle out the window of your hotel room. Do you have a rifle, and is it okay if we come and check? I'd rather be in position to protect people rather than to give forewarning before we've made it all the way up there to the 5th floor.
Right, only you didn't ascertain that anyone was necessarily in danger because the call wasn't that anybody was pointing a rifle at someone or making threats towards anyone, correct?
In my mind, I believed that there was a rifle in play on the 5th floor.
Okay.
And there was...
Now, Sergeant, you're going into up to the 5th floor, already thinking that there is a weapon, a rifle, that all these people are in danger, right? And that you are there to protect everyone in the hotel room without knowing if there was, in fact, a rifle in there or whether someone was correct in that assumption or not. And that's a yes or no answer is what I require. If you can't answer it with that, I'll let it go.
In my profession, you can never be 100% positive in anything until usually after the fact.
Okay, so now you go upstairs with your, what you called an organized team, but with limited resources. What limited resources are those? How were you limited?
Simply because, we went up with the people that we had available at the time in order to secure the floor. And of course, we had other resources responding after the fact.
All right, so you had 6 people, including yourself, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you consider those limited resources against one person with a rifle?
The reason I say that in a perfect world, you'd have everything available to you, but unfortunately you don't. You have the people that are assigned to the district at that time.
Okay. So, well, with the way you explain it, then, you are always going to be with limited resources, correct? Because it's not a perfect world.
It is not a perfect world.
Okay. Correct. So technically, you came with the resources that you would be ordinarily allowed. You weren't limited by anything, right?
Limited by the number of officers available.
Even though you were in this active, maybe threatening situation, right? You're heightened alert. You sent 2 of the officers downstairs to get a key card and to make a call. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, good. All right, so when Officer Cochran went downstairs, what did you tell him to do when he made the call?
To call into the room, let them know it was the Mesa Police, and of course, I'm sorry, this is a recollection, and I don't know exactly what he said, but I asked them to let them know we're here and to have the female come out first.
All right, so even though a few moments ago you said it wasn't appropriate to announce that you were here, you actually did send the Officer Cochran downstairs to say, hey, it's the Mesa Police Department, I need you guys to come.
Right, with the previous thing, I took it that if we're already downstairs before we had gone upstairs.
And you didn't tell him what to say, right, Officer Cochran?
No.
Okay. That the female walked out first, and then the male came out right after her, correct?
Yes, very quickly.
Okay. And since you don't know exactly what Officer Cochran said to them, he could have said, the way he phrased it, is the woman comes out first and the male comes out second?
No, he told the female to come out first.
Okay. And that's what happened, right? She appeared first?
Yeah.
And then the male appeared second?
Was not expecting or thinking or planning that the male would come out almost at the same time as the female, if that's the answer to it.
But he didn't walk out hand in hand with her, right?
No.
They didn't walk out like together, step by step. He was actually right behind her.
Yes, by maybe a tenth of a second.
Okay. And when they came out, you screamed at them to stop, right?
Right.
Said it really loud, stop, put down on the ground.
Stop right there! Stop! Stop! Get on the ground, both of you! Lay down on the ground! Lay down on the ground!
And then you said to them, if you make another mistake, you're going to be shot. Sergeant, what was the first mistake that they made?
Since apparently we have a failure for you to comprehend simple instructions, I'm going to go over some of them again, okay? Can you both hear and understand me?
Yes.
All right. If you make a mistake, another mistake, there's a very severe possibility you're both going to get shot. Do you understand that?
Yes. I didn't want them to come out together like that. Instead of dealing with one person at a time and being able to slow it down, instead now I'm dealing with multiple people in the hallway, and I don't know what's left behind in the room.
Right.
And who's left behind in the room.
Okay, so you were threatening to have them both shot.
No.
Hold on. I'm not finished with my question. Okay. Because they came out one after the other. So the next wrong thing they made, right, that you perceived was a mistake, could have gotten them shot, correct?
I'm not sure if I quite get it, but I'll try to answer as best I can. What my idea and intent at the time is to warn them, right, that if you did something that could be perceived as a threat, that they could be shot.
But then you did not say that.
No, ma'am, I don't recall my exact verbiage. I don't.
You said to the two individuals, if you make a mistake, another mistake, there's a very severe possibility that you're both going to get shot. Do you understand?
Yes.
And so the first mistake was that they came out too close together, correct?
Together, period.
And so any other mistake that you were going to decide what the mistake was going to get them shot.
No.
That's what you said. There's a very severe possibility you're going to get shot.
Possibility existed. I didn't say we are.
Oh, you want me to show you where it says there's a very severe possibility?
Possibility, ma'am.
Okay. And when Mr. Shaber tried to ask you a question, you said...
This is... Shut up. I'm not here to be tactful and diplomatic with you. You listen, you obey.
Shut up. I'm not here to be tactful and diplomatic with you. You listen, you obey. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, and so you expected him to obey every command that you gave him, right?
I expect him at least to try.
That's not what you told him. What you told him was, I expect you to listen and obey. You didn't say, I expect you to try to obey. Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that at this point you're a bit angry with Mr. Shaver?
No.
No? And you watched this tape, right? I mean, you listened to your voice on the tape. And you wouldn't describe that as being angry when you tell someone to shut up really loud? I'm not here to be tactful and diplomatic with you. You were not upset.
Well, ma'am, I didn't want to necessarily have a extended conversation with him. In direct answer to your question, no, I was not angry with him.
And from what you told defense counsel, that any movement that would have been made under this situation would be perceived as a threat, correct?
Yes, and what I was concerned about was motions specifically for a weapon.
Okay. And what you also said during direct examination is when they came out and you told them to prone out on the floor, they both cooperated. Is that true?
Yes, they did.
So Mr. Shaver and Ms. Portillo, that was the female's name, they were cooperative when they understood what was being asked of them.
Correct.
And again, at this time, Mr. Shaver, as he's out there, and the female, there were no questions about are there weapons in the room, because now they're outside the room. I know you asked if there was another person there, but they're not told why they were being detained, right? What you were there for, correct? Or if there were other weapons or any kind of weapons in the room, correct?
Yes.
So he was in custody. He doesn't know why. Nobody tells him why he's coming out of the room. Nobody says, hey, we're evacuating, or, you know, there's danger to you, of you, anything like that, correct? Because you don't know what Officer Cochran said.
Correct.
And he doesn't say any of that in his report.
Yes,
his
sir.
report, he claims that all he said was, you need to come out, and is there a female in there? And the female comes out first. Correct?
Yes.
All right.
Stop right there! Stop! Stop! Get on the ground, both of you! Lay down on the ground! Lay down on the ground!
Who else is in the room?
Nobody.
Nobody else is in the room?
Nobody.
Positive?
Nobody. Absolutely positive.
Okay. Since apparently we have a failure for you to comprehend simple instructions, I'm going to go over some of them again, okay? Can you both hear and understand me?
Yes.
All right. If you make a mistake, another mistake, there's a very severe possibility you're both going to get shot. Do you understand that?
Yes. Yes.
All right. This is... Shut up. I'm not here to be tactful and diplomatic with you. You listen, you obey. For one thing, did I tell you to move, young man? Did I tell you to put both your hands Put both your hands on the top of your head and interlace your fingers. Take your feet and cross your left foot over your right foot. Who else is in the room?
Nobody.
Alright. Are you both drunk?
No.
Alright. So you're not going to have any problems understanding anything that I tell you, right?
Correct.
Alright. No, you're not going to do anything but come towards us. Okay, this is the deal. Young man, you are not to move. You're to put your eyes down and look down at the carpet. You're to keep your fingers interlaced behind your head. You're to keep your feet crossed. If you move, we're going to consider that a threat. And we are going to deal with it, and you may not survive it. Do you understand me?
Yes, sir.
Young lady, shut up and listen. Right? You are to keep your feet crossed. Take both of your hands, put them flat in front of you. You are to push yourself up to a kneeling position. Kneeling position. Now, put both your hands in the air. Okay, crawl towards us.
I'm so sorry.
Okay. Stop. Okay. Grab and pull.
No, Rich, pull
Pull,
this
Rich,
way.
pull. Let me know when you're clear. Clear? No, you're not clear. You haven't registered yet.
You're not. You're being changed from the beginning of this one, okay? Just be cool and we'll be done.
Okay, when you're done with that, lay her flat. Okay, I need one more cuff rope. Okay. This is the deal. We're going to do almost like we did before. Okay. Okay, young man, listen to my instructions and do not make a mistake.
Start giving verbal commands to the gentleman. I wanted to keep things as simple as possible.
You are to keep your legs crossed. Do you understand me?
Yes, sir.
You are to put both of your hands palms down, straight out in front of you. Push yourself up to a kneeling position. I said keep your legs crossed! I didn't say there's a conversation. Hands in the air! Hands up in the air!
I wanted to keep things as simple as possible, and also he already had a template, a role model of instructions that had been given to the female. Try to give those instructions to him so that it would be the same. Instructed him to come up to his knees and put his hands up in the air. He came up to his knees, and as I recall, he started to put both hands behind his back.
I didn't say there's a conversation. Hands in the air! Hands up in the air!
And what did that tell you? What did you take that to mean?
I took that as
feel about that?
I knew that he was not following instructions, and there was a possibility that he may have been trying to bring a weapon into play.
Detective Sight told us earlier that it looked to him like he was putting his hands behind his back to be handcuffed.
When Mr. Shaver first put his hands behind his back, what that looked like?
When he first put his hands behind his back, he was on his knees. He had his hands up like this, and he brought them back like this.
Did he not, in fact, bend over at the waist?
There might have been a slight bend. I would have to review the video for that specific movement, but
So if a suspect was to have a weapon behind his back, would it make sense for him to bend down and use both of his hands to grab one weapon?
it's possible, but it didn't appear to me to be a weapon drawing motion.
What did it look like to you?
In my experience, what I usually see is when I'm giving someone a command and they're not comprehending the command, such as if I tell someone to put their hands on the car or put your hands on your head, and because for whatever reason they think you're going to handcuff them, so I call it the handcuffing move.
Is that what it looked like to you? That
Yes.
he was getting ready to be handcuffed?
Yes.
Is that how you perceived it?
No. Number one, he was not in proximity to us to be handcuffed, so I don't know why. No, I can't put myself into his mind, so I don't know why he would think that that would be an appropriate place for him to come up to put his hands behind his back for handcuffing. Also, they didn't follow the instructions that I had given him.
What did you perceive that action to be?
At that point, realized maybe he just doesn't understand. We had distance at that time, so I felt that he had made a mistake. Right? So I reaffirmed the verbal instructions to him. As I recall, he affirmed that he understood. Told him that he was to keep his hands up in the air and start crawling towards us.
Please state your name.
Philip Mitchell Brailsford.
And what are you feeling at that point in time?
Well, we don't know what's going on at this point. It's a very tense situation right from the get-go because we have a man with a gun in an elevated position in a family hotel. I don't know anything about this man. I don't know what the intentions are. I don't know how many people are in the room. That's the problem. There's a lot of the information that we just don't know at this time.
And does that raise a concern for you?
Absolutely.
At this point, what are you focused on?
I'm focused on the hands.
All right. And why?
The hands are what kill us. I'm trained, as we've heard in previous testimony, we're trained that the hands are what kill you. If any action is going to be had against you, it will start with the hands. So, for some reason, and I don't know why, he places his hands behind his back.
All right. What goes through your mind at that point?
For one, I didn't know why he did that. He certainly wasn't instructed to do that. In my training, I've been taught that it's possible that could indicate a weapons check, or what we call a security check.
What does that mean?
It means when a suspect or person reaches behind their back and they either tap their gun or whatever weapon it is back there to see if it's still there, or something of that nature.
That's also could be possible any number of things.
It could be a number of things.
But what goes through your mind the moment when that happens?
What was going through my mind when that happened was that he was performing a weapons check.
And why was that?
Just because that's how I've been trained.
And did it have any impact on the nature of the call? And
It most certainly raised my concern level.
First, we put sand on your back. Did that resemble a draw stroke to you?
That motion didn't appear to be a draw stroke to me, no.
Was your concern more of a security check?
Yes.
Right. But in any event, you made a decision not to discharge your weapon at him.
That's correct. In that split-second moment, I decided not to fire.
Now, at this point with Mr. Shaver, do you, based on your training and experience, believe him to be armed?
Absolutely.
All right. You didn't shoot him then?
No, I did not.
Why not?
Several reasons, actually. One, it happened very fast. There was much more distance than the second time. And, I hesitated. And simply my decision at that point was not to fire. I didn't fire.
And then what happened?
Like I said, it happened very fast, but his hands came out, and I saw there was nothing in them.
Can you see what's in hands as they're moving, or do you visualize once the hands stop?
I couldn't visualize it until the hands stopped. It was a blur until they stopped. That's when I saw that they were empty.
All right. And you can see the hands when they come out in this situation.
Correct.
But you saw the hands were empty.
Yes.
All right. So then what? So is your concern level up another notch?
I would say several individuals had their concern level go up a notch.
Right.
I know Sergeant Langley's level of concern went up.
How do you know that?
Well, his tone of voice, the way he responded to Mr. Shaver.
And what are you thinking at that point?
I thought he was reaching for, performing a weapons check at that point. I obviously can't say what he was doing. I don't know what he was doing at that point.
You've seen the prosecutor say, oh, he's nodding or preparing to get handcuffed. Did that thought go through your mind at that point?
I didn't see any officers back there to handcuff him. certainly no one told him to do that.
At that moment in time, was it going through your mind, oh, he's just putting his hands there to be handcuffed?
No.
Then what occurs?
So after that happens, Sergeant Langley yells at Mr. Shaver, hands in the air, hands in the air. If you do that again, we're going to shoot you.
All right. Now, did you take that as an order from Sergeant Langley?
No, absolutely not.
What did you take that as?
I took that more as a warning. Hey, look, don't put your hands behind your back or this is what's going to happen. It's a possibility of what can happen.
Would either of the rifles that were in that, would they have fit in someone's pocket?
No.
Would you have been able to fit them in like your waistband, in those kinds of shorts, those basketball shorts?
You could fit it in your waistband, but it would be clearly visible.
All right, so it would stick out from where the shorts were?
Yes.
Now, when you watch the tape, you know, the video, he crawled towards the officers. Is that normally how these situations are handled? Do you ask a suspect to approach as an officer?
You would sometimes have suspects approach you, but the tactic of having someone crawl towards you in the manner that I observed in the video was nothing that I've ever been trained or observed.
All right. Was, from viewing the tape and talking, especially from seeing it yourself, was there anything impeding any of the officers from walking up to Mr. Shaver when he was prone on the ground?
Not that I could see, no.
All right. And so they were all armed and there was nothing physically stopping them from approaching him and putting handcuffs on him when he was down, correct?
That's correct.
Are there different ways to have a suspect approach when there's officers there ordering them to approach?
Yes.
Could you give us one of those examples?
One example would be if it's what you perceive to be a threatening situation. You might have someone standing. You would have them reach behind their back and grab the top part of their T-shirt or shirt and lift it up so that you can see their waistband. You would then have them circle 360 degrees and stop so that they're facing away from you. You would then have them place their hands either above their head or out to their side and walk backwards towards your voice.
You do that again, we're shooting you. Do you understand? You do not shoot me. Then listen to my instructions. I'm trying to do it. Don't talk! Listen! Hands straight up in the air. Do not put your hands down for any reason. You think you're going to fall, you better fall on your face. Your hands go back in the small of your back or down. We are going to shoot you. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. Crawl towards me. Crawl towards me! Yes, sir. Don't get him on. Okay, hold on him. One with me. Key card. Key card. Go. I got it. Sam 81998. Hold on. They gave me 2 key cards. Stay quiet. You guys don't know where yet. Tell her and get her out of here. Okay, hold on it. Okay, I need one up with me. One up with me. Come on, you guys, get up with me. Take this place, hold on the door. Okay. Okay, secure your weapon. Secure your weapon.
Secured.
Okay, go, you're out.
He started crawling towards us, and he's crawling towards us. We're watching him. Officer Brailsford was in a kneeling position directly to my front. Officer Elmore was to my left on the north side. As the gentleman crawled towards us, he comes up and he abruptly starts putting his right hand behind him, almost like in what I thought was a drawing position, like he was drawing a weapon. At that time, my instinct was, it just reverberated in my brain. I said, I was thinking...
I'm sorry, what?
His instinct, just experience, training. I looked at him and I just thought, gun. I remember that at that point, I thought that we were going to get shot. I thought I was going to get shot. I thought, I was yelling at him. I had my rifle, pistol grip of my rifle was in my right hand. Barrel was pointed down because I was directly behind Officer Brailsford, who was kneeling. I'm thinking to myself, gun. I'm starting to yell. My thumb is on the selector switch of my rifle, and I'm starting to pull my rifle up and manipulate the selector switch when I realized, and this is all happening, I guess, in thousandths of a second, that I can't make the shot because Officer Brailsford is directly in front of me.
Why?
Problem is, Officer Brailsford is kneeling in front of me. In order to make the shot, I'd have to bring up my barrel up over his head, lean forward and punch forward, get my barrel past his head so that if he did come up, I didn't shoot him in the back of the head. Also, I have a short-barreled rifle, and at that proximity, just the muzzle blast could have killed or seriously injured him. So I couldn't make the shot.
And is that the only reason you didn't?
Yes, otherwise I would have shot.
And then what happened?
I'm yelling. I'm got my thumb on my selector switch for my rifle. I'm pulling up. Officer Brailsford engages him. The gentleman goes down. At that time, knew that the gentleman was down. I still had a hallway that the team had to clear and a room that I wanted to move on and see if we could at least secure the doorway of that.
Is what Officer Brailsford did appropriate?
I believed at the time, and I believe now, that he was protecting the team. I mean, that was his job, was to make sure that we weren't killed or seriously injured.
Hey guys, I just wanted to make a quick video because I just need to share my frustrations. As you guys know, my husband was killed a few weeks ago while traveling for work in Arizona. And he was a really good dad. He was a hard worker and my best friend. It's really hard and frustrating because his story isn't being shared that much. It is by my friends, so I don't want you guys to think that I don't appreciate that. I do. But it's frustrating because he was white and because he was just a young guy and he doesn't have, disabilities or, all these things that other stories are being shared, that it doesn't matter. Because his life didn't matter too. He was my husband and my kid's father, and it definitely matters to us. And now all that's left of him is this. And I appreciate those who are helping get his story out, because what happened was wrong. And I hope one day justice will come, and the Mesa Police Department will give me answers for why they killed him. So please continue to help share our story and get things out. I'm sorry I'm emotional. I'm also 6 months pregnant. And this is just a horrible thing to go through. So please continue to share. I beg you from my heart, please just help get his story out. Thank you.
Alright, and we wrote a song last night, and we are recording it for our 3rd time.
I did it with my mom.
And what is your song called?
I love you, Daddy.
Alright, she wrote this for her dad and to her dad. You ready?
Yes!
Alright. I remember when you were happy, oh my daddy. The last time I saw you, we were swinging, with happiness ringing. I wish you could be here today, so we could play. You could tuck me in bed one more time. You were mine. Oh, Daniel, my daddy, can you hear me? I really miss you and want you near me. Until we meet again. Until we meet again. Just remember I love you. Until we meet again. Until we meet again.
What did you see as far as when you were looking at him?
So, like, I don't know. Like, he was even scared for his life. He was like, don't shoot me. And I don't know what he did, but the cops shot him.
And you did not hear him crying from 10 feet away or less feet away? No.
Oh, I'm not saying I didn't hear. I just didn't remember it or gather it as my strongest perception.
You testified yesterday that you did not remember Daniel Shavern crying that night. Is that correct?
At the moment, I didn't really pay attention.
Do not shoot me. I'm trying to do it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And then they shot him.
That's what you heard when they told you that? Did you hear them saying that?
Yes, because he came out after me. Okay. And then I heard him saying, please don't shoot. And he was crying for his life. And then they shot him.
I remember when you were happy, oh my daddy. The last time I saw you, we were swinging with happiness ringing. I wish you could be here today so we could play. You could tuck me in bed one more time, but you were mine. Oh, Daniel, my daddy, can you hear me? I really miss you and want you near me. Until we meet again. Until we meet again. Just remember I love you. Until we meet again. Until we meet again.
Until we meet again, bye.
I want two.
And then we got a call, me and that guy Daniel, because we were talking about families. I was like, yeah, I have 6 kids. And he was like, I have 2 kids and I'm married and blah, blah, blah. And then, I don't know if it was you guys, but Laquita, like, they called and they're like, come out to the hallway. And so he's like, the police want us to come outside. So I came out and that's when they're like, get down, yada, yada. And I automatically just, I just got down and then, like, they moved me away and I just heard gunshots and I seen him go down, like.
Okay. Were you looking away when the gunshots went off? And then you turned around and saw him go down? Or were you looking at him before?
I seen him get shot. And then I looked away out of respect because I knew that you guys were shooting him because he wasn't following protocol.
Could you see him when this was
I did see them shoot him and I just looked away out of respect because I didn't want to see him die. And then they shot him and he fell on top of my purse, so now my purse is cursed because you guys shot him and all my belongings are in there and he's like on top of my purse because I had to leave my purse right there and like crawl on my knees to you guys.
Did you see him with anything or did he make any movements?
No,
or?
I didn't know what he came out with because I came out first. And then he came out second, and they were, like, yelling at him and shit. And
Do you remember what they said?
Like, get on your knees, put your hands in the air, and put your hands forward, crawl on your knees towards me. That's what I heard, because I was trying to follow protocol.
And you heard him say, please don't shoot?
Yes, I did. I did hear him shoot, like, even if
you heard him shoot, or you heard him say, please don't
I heard him say, please don't shoot, but I didn't see what happened because all the cops were in front of me, and then I just heard gunshots, and when they moved away, he was on top of my purse, face down, and
So
I knew he was dead.
You didn't see him get shot. You saw him right after, is that correct?
I heard the gunshots, and then when they moved away, I seen him face forward. So I actually moved my face out of respect because I didn't want to see somebody get shot in front of me, and they shot him.
Okay. And you were behind where they were standing, correct?
Yes, I followed everything they asked me to, and I was with them first before they were with him, but I did see him say, please don't shoot, so I don't know if, like, they, like, they just assumed he had something on him because he was like, please don't shoot, and he was crying, and then they shot him.
Okay. All right. What happened after you heard the shots and you saw him?
I automatically got handcuffed.
Okay. Did you get handcuffed before this or after?
After.
After? Okay.
Yes. They picked me up. I don't know, the Asian looking guy. I don't know if he was Asian, but his eyes, I don't know. I just assumed he was Asian. He took me to the elevator, he handcuffed me, he walked me down, I went in a car, and I was handcuffed to that bench for a while, and then they brought a car, and then I got in the car.
Okay.
Did you find any such inconsistencies in this case?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and what were those?
When I reviewed the reports of the 5 officers that were at the scene, I noticed I became very suspicious because all 5 reports...
Excuse me, Your Honor. I'll object to this as personal.
So why didn't you go and interview them for follow-up?
Because all 5 reports omitted the same information, which was vital to the case.
So why not go ahead and go and ask about those omissions?
I felt since they all 5 eliminated the same information that they needed to stand on the integrity of those reports themselves.
According to the complaint allegations, what happened is Sergeant Langley and his entire team, when they got back to the station, they all created reports that omitted any mention of Daniel Shaver being scared, being compliant, begging not to be shot. They omitted the specific explanations of the orders that were being given by Sergeant Langley, and all of the officers reported instead that they all perceived an imminent threat at that time.
Did Officer Doan say he was afraid of Mr. Shaver?
He did not say he was afraid. It's not specified in his report as far as I can recall.
Did he say he felt threatened by Mr. Shaver at any point?
No.
All right. Did he mention that Mr. Shaver was crying and asking to not be shot?
No, he did not.
All right. All right. What about Officer Elmore? Did he say he was afraid of Mr. Shaver?
He did not use that word. I'm paraphrasing, but I believe he used something along the lines of he perceived a threat.
From Mr. Shaver, correct?
Yes.
But he did not fire his weapon at Mr. Shaver. Did he mention Mr. Shaver was crying and asking not to be shot?
No, he did not.
All right, and these officers wrote supplements to reports, basically, correct?
Yes.
Did any of them mention the fact that Mr. Shaver was crying and asking to not be shot? All right. How about Officer Gomez? Did he mention being afraid of Mr. Shaver?
No.
Feeling threatened in any way by Mr. Shaver?
No.
Did he fire his weapon?
No, he did not.
And what about Sergeant Langley? Do you know if he had a weapon pointed at Mr. Shaver?
I do not know.
All right. Did he say or write in his report that he was afraid of Mr. Shaver?
He said that he perceived a threat, and Mr. Shaver's motion was an attempt to reach a handgun.
Did Sergeant Langley mention Mr. Shaver was crying and asking to not be shot?
No.
All right. And he did not fire any weapon or any taser or anything at Mr. Shaver, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. By then he'd already cried. He was crying, right?
Yes.
And he had twice said, please don't shoot, and then don't shoot me.
I remember at least once he said that, yes.
Okay. And by the way, none of that is in your report, right? About him crying or begging not to be shot. Okay. So then he still has his left hand.
And you do not shoot me. I'm trying to do what he is, sir. Yes, sir.
Timothy T. Williams, Jr. I'm a police procedure and use of force expert in both state and federal courts.
All right. How long have you been an expert in those 2 areas?
Since 2003.
Okay. And do you specialize in officer-involved shooting?
I do.
All right. How is it that you came about this line of work?
Well, I'm a retired senior detective supervisor from the Los Angeles Police Department, where I served over 29 years.
So these trainings that are involved, do they include mindset trainings?
Well, you have to have a mindset as to relates to, I call it tactical awareness, if you will, as how you approach a situation. You have to be mindful of your surroundings. You have to be mindful of what the person or persons are doing. You have to be mindful of your environment, and you got to be observant, if you will. You got to take in everything.
Now, there was an exchange between Officer Langley after he did it where Mr. Shaver was warned at least twice not to do this or he'd be shot. And he then followed that up by saying, "Don't shoot me."
Yes.
And then Officer Langley gave the warning again to him, and then for unknown reasons he chose to do what we've seen on the video.
That's correct.
Did you notice, I'm talking about that night, that exchange, or what were you taking away in the moment of that exchange, or if anything?
In the moment, I didn't really perceive the dialogue between the two. My main focus was on Mr. Shaver's actions and his hands.
Did you know that he had been warned what not to do with his hands?
I did know that what he had been warned.
Did you notice that in response to the warning he said, "Don't shoot me"?
Yes.
Do you remember hearing it that night?
I didn't remember hearing it that night, but upon reviewing the video hundreds of times, I've been able to, yes, that's...
And what about that he was upset and apparently crying in those seconds before the discharge of the weapon? Did that enter your mind that night as you were on lethal coverage in that few seconds?
No, that didn't enter my mind, and we're trained that we're not necessarily to pay attention to what a suspect is saying, and we're supposed to watch their actions and what they do with their hands.
When the officers are taught to show up at a scene that is, for example, a high threat, or the assessment seems to begin at a high level, such as in this case, a male with a rifle at the window, does that mean that threat level never changes?
Well, you're going in there, you got a call, a man or a person with a gun. You go in there your goal is to de-escalate the situation. Your goal is to investigate and find out what's going on and come to a successful conclusion, if you will.
You told Detective Sipe that in the interview that you felt that Daniel was trying to gain tactical advantage on you. Does that sound familiar?
He's crawling towards us, trying to gain a position of advantage in order to gain a better firing position on us. So as I was explaining before, this interview took place just, very shortly after the shooting had occurred. I was very shooken up, and my intent was to explain that Mr. Shaver was instructed to crawl towards us, and inadvertently, the closer he got towards us, it provides him with a tactical advantage. I certainly wasn't trying to insinuate that I thought he was trying to do that. It just, with my training, I'm taught that as a subject that's closer to you, it inadvertently gives them that advantage.
So you did tell Detective Sipe that he's crawling towards us, trying to gain a position of advantage in order to gain a better firing position on us.
Crawl towards me! Crawl towards me!
That's what I was just explaining.
I'm sorry, I think I asked a very simple question, which is this what you told him or not? I didn't ask for an explanation.
I'm sorry, ma'am. It's just, there's no simple way to answer it in a yes or no. I need to explain.
Okay, but
Mr. Brailsford, you remember saying it or you don't remember saying it?
I did say that to Detective Sipe, yes.
Okay. And so this was the individual, Mr. Shaver, who was being commanded to crawl towards you, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And so then he tells the male to start crawling towards us. So the male uses his hands and his knees and starts crawling towards us, doing little baby a couple steps in, the male pauses and then quickly reaches back as if he's reaching for a weapon. I can see his right hand go behind his back from my angle, so I perceive this as a threat. He's crawling towards us, trying to gain a position of advantage in order to gain a better firing position on us. At this point, a million things are racing through my head. This guy's getting closer to us. The first time he reached behind his back, he wasn't as close to us. This time, he definitely, it seemed like he was like right there, right in front of us. And just the way he reached, it wasn't like he was taking another step to crawl towards us. It was he slid his left hand out, and then like turned to the side and reached back with his right hand to where I couldn't see it. So that's when I assessed the threat. I fired my weapon 5 times, and I stopped shooting at the threat once I was able to determine that there was no longer a threat at this point. It was a really, it happened so fast, it was like a blink of an eye. It was just a scary situation because, I mean, as you can see in this hallway, it's very narrow. The male was very, very close to us where he could have easily and quickly drawn a weapon down on us and fired without aiming, and he could have hit us or the citizen that we had just detained. I mean, it was myself on the right side next to room 504. There was Brian Elmore. Sergeant Langley's standing behind me, so he's, his head's right there. And then Officer Dillon's over here, and then there's the citizen. I don't know where the citizen and Officer Gomez and the K-9 unit, Officer Cochran was, but it's just a very, very tight corridor, no cover. Bullets would zip right through these walls. I don't think these walls would stop bullets.
Is it your belief, based on experience and training in this field, that you need to have an identification of a threat before you react to it, and not just a perception?
If there's a perception of a threat and you haven't used any force in that perception, you may be shooting all the time. You have to, that threat or that perception in some way has to be confirmed. If a person has a gun, if you see a gun in that person's hands coming up to a imminent threat level, then that perception has been confirmed, and then you respond accordingly.
In your training, were you taught that it's okay to fire at someone just because they reached for their waistband?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Sir?
No, you weren't. That's not the training I received. It's not the training law enforcement received. You got to, individual reach for his waistband, and they may be pulling their pants up. You want to shoot him for that?
Why did you say you perceived Mr. Shaver was armed?
That's how I'm trained, man. In a gun call, in a situation as this, I have to presume he's armed until I can physically prove otherwise.
Okay. And you are trained that if you perceive someone is armed on a call like that and they move their elbow, then your training, your testimony is that your training allows you to fire at that person, correct?
It all depends on the totality of the circumstance.
Great. Could you explain to us the totality of the circumstances in this case that caused you to fire?
Absolutely, ma'am. It started right from the beginning, receiving the emergency call, having many officers respond to the scene of La Quinta, where there was a man with a gun in an elevated location, in a highly populated location. And from there, Sergeant Langley formed an immediate action team at that point. We wouldn't just form something like that if it was simply someone smoking marijuana in their hotel room. It was a very serious situation. It was potentially an active shooter.
Okay, that's the totality of the circumstances?
That's part of it.
Okay, what's the rest of it?
If you'd like me to proceed through the rest of what happened, I can tell you exactly that.
Oh, no, I'm not asking you what happened. What I'm asking is you mentioned the word totality of the circumstances 5-6 different times yesterday, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what are the totality of the circumstances that caused you to fire? Let me give you an example. Yesterday, Mr. Jacobs mentioned what a totality of the circumstance he trains you guys on, right?
Yes.
It's the pertinent objective facts.
Yes.
Where's the pertinent objective facts in this case?
The pertinent objective facts are that we're responding to the scene of the man with the gun.
That's the only fact that you think is pertinent?
There's many facts that happened, ma'am.
Like what?
He reached behind his back when he wasn't supposed to several times. He was ordered by Sergeant Langley and warned what would happen if he did reach behind his back. Moments before the actual shooting, he was asked if he was drunk, to which he replied that he wasn't. He was asked on multiple occasions if he understood Sergeant Langley's commands, and he replied that he did.
Do you, in the 2 years you worked with the Mesa Police Department, did you have the opportunity to interact with people who were intoxicated?
Yes.
Okay. And do they normally tell you the truth about the fact that they're intoxicated?
Not all the time.
You said also that you were taught to presume that on a call of a man with a rifle, that he would have more weapons. Is that correct?
Yes, based on my training, I've been taught that where there's one weapon, there's highly likely you'll find more.
What does presume mean?
Presume means essentially the same thing as assume. We have to go into this thinking that they are armed until we can prove otherwise.
Okay. Does it mean that something is true without proof? It's a belief that something is true without proof. Do you know if that's what presume means?
I'm sorry, I don't really understand.
Do you know if presume means believing something is true without proof?
What happened, because of the totality of the circumstance, I had to presume that he was armed until we could physically prove otherwise.
Okay. I understand that. What I mean is, when I said, what does presume mean, and you gave me what you thought it meant, does it also mean to believe something is true without proof? Just a definition, I mean.
I'm just telling you based on my training.
So you have no idea what presume actually means, the word?
That's what I told you, ma'am. I presumed that he was armed until I could physically prove otherwise.
Okay. But what does presume mean? You said it means assume, right?
I just explained that, ma'am.
Okay. So it does... All right. So we're not going to answer that. Okay. And were you able to tell on the audio that Mr. Shaver was crying and begging not to be shot, etc.?
After reviewing the video, yes, I was able to see that.
All right. Did you mention any of that to Detective Sype?
During the interview?
Yes.
I believe he asked me what I was remembering in that moment, and I told him that I was basing my recollection off of my recollection.
Based on your recollection and not just from watching the video?
Correct.
And to do all that, you got to be aware. You got to have tactical awareness. You got to be aware that there may be a gun involved, and conduct yourself accordingly.
So why did you say there may be a weapon involved? I mean, the call was about a weapon.
Yeah, there is. You get calls about a weapon. Sometimes you may not find a weapon. So you've got to you take it as though there is a weapon. You may deploy a tactical team to address the issue, and you may deploy lethal versus non-lethal to deal with these types of situations. And you want to bring it to a successful conclusion, and you want to go in there and doing your best to de-escalate and escalate a situation.
Okay. And so are the officers taught that during the trainings, that the objective is usually to de-escalate a situation?
You get that from the academy until the day you retire through continuing education. De-escalation is the mantra of dealing with these types of situations. You're going in there, you go into, when you get calls, you go, law enforcement, they go into problems. And as you go into problems, you want to try to calm the problem down if you can. You're given tools to deal with the situation. You're given training. You're taught to use verbalization, command presence, and all of that in order to control the situation. If you see a person with a gun in their hand, and it's a threat but not an imminent threat, you'll be shooting people that you ought not to be shooting. That's why you're trained, when you see that, you're trained to tell the person, drop the gun, give a person a chance to comply to the commands. A lot of time, it's been my experience when I was out there in the field, the person dropped the gun. And again, it's a tool that is used. Now it becomes an imminent threat, then you have the tools to use to stop that threat. And it may end up with less lethal, or it may end up with deadly force.
All right. And so is the presence of a gun by itself considered an imminent threat?
Not by itself, no.
What is the difference between an imminent threat and an immediate threat then?
An imminent threat or immediate threat is when, if I have a gun to my side, and it's a potential threat that's there, then I bring it up, and I'm pointing it at the officer. Now this becomes an imminent threat, or if it's coming up, it's becoming an imminent threat. Now, if I have the gun down to my side and I drop it, well, that threat is terminated, and then you take the person in custody.
Is it your belief, based on experience and training in this field, that you need to have an identification of a threat before you react to it, and not just a perception?
If there's a perception of a threat, and you haven't used any force in that perception, you may be shooting all the time. You have to, that threat or that perception in some way has to be confirmed. If a person has a gun, if you see a gun in that person's hands coming up to a imminent threat level, then that perception has been confirmed, and you respond accordingly.
In your training, were you taught that it's okay to fire at someone just because they reached for their waistband?
Same objection, Your Honor.
So?
No, you weren't. That's not the training I received. It's not the training law enforcement received. You got to, individual reach for his waistband, and they may be pulling the pants up. You want to shoot him for that?
When you watched the video the first time, what was the first thing, if anything, that you noticed about it?
Well, the first thing I noticed was a couple things. When the decedent came out of the room, I noticed that it appeared to me that he was appeared to be inebriated. The second thing I noticed that his pants were very low, below his knees, and so these are the things that I noticed as they came out. And the reason why that's important, because certain things transpired after by commands by Sergeant Langley that he was doing, and that was important as to what additional observations that could be made as the situation continued.
Good morning, and may it please the court. Spencer Scharf on behalf of defendant appellant Charles Langley. Mr. Langley is entitled to qualified immunity because he did not violate a clearly established constitutional right. Even at the pleading stage, it is plaintiff's burden to show that the rights allegedly violated were clearly established. Yet plaintiffs have not identified any controlling authority that existed as of January 2016 that would have clearly informed Mr. Langley that his conduct on the night in question violated a clearly established law.
Okay, I'm sorry, counsel.
Please.
It's not clearly established that an unarmed person who poses in the circumstances no danger, that it's not clearly established that you can't set rules of engagement, that if you make a mistake or you move, we're going to shoot you dead? It's not clearly established that that violates the Constitution?
Your Honor, I would disagree with your characterization of the allegations.
Well, I'm reading it. Your client's, it's alleged, and again, as you say, this is at the pleading stage. If you make a mistake...
If you make a mistake, another mistake, there's a very severe possibility you're both going to get shot. Do you understand that? Yes. If you move, we're going to consider that a threat. And we are going to deal with it, and you may not survive it. Do you understand me? Yes, sir.
Or another mistake, there's a very severe possibility you're both going to get shot. If you move, we're going to consider it a threat, and we're going to deal with it, and you may not survive it. I mean, maybe your client didn't say that, but that's what he's alleged to have said, right?
Yes, that's certainly the allegations.
And then the person under his command fires 5 shots and kills this person who's crawling toward your client on the floor, as alleged.
As alleged, yes.
So I don't understand how that comports with any reading of the Constitution.
Well, Your Honor, the allegations of what was commanded or warned are warnings that are constitutionally required before deadly force is issued. The suspect needs to understand the gravity of the situation, that if they don't comply with the officer's commands, that deadly force could be used. And all of the case law that is cited by the plaintiffs to establish this clearly established right, Graham, Garner, Harris, Diorly, are all cases, one, where this Supreme Court has specifically admonished this court from relying on outside the obvious case. And here, this is far from an obvious case. Mr. Langley did not use any force.
What makes you say it's far from the obvious case? I mean, if in fact the allegations of the complaint turn out to be true and you have somebody who does not, according to the allegations, pose a threat, how is it that that's not an obvious case that a police officer is not allowed to shoot and kill him?
So two important facts that are alleged is that as alleged, Mr. Shaver did pose a deadly threat. If the court considers the allegations as true, as they must at this stage.
What was the threat?
The threat was these officers were responding to a report of an individual pointing a rifle outside of an elevated position.
His T-shirt and shorts, does he have a rifle hidden someplace?
Well,
do the officers do anything to pat him down to see if he's carrying a weapon?
So, as alleged, the officers were, the plaintiffs make clear that the individual who had the rifle in the room did not match Mr. Shaver's description. So, as alleged, when they're in this hallway, they still have to operate under the assumption that there's another man in the room with a long rifle. And the plaintiffs are very...
Stop, because that doesn't tell you why the person who's crawling on the floor poses a threat such that the Constitution allows an officer to shoot and kill him. If that person isn't carrying a rifle, that person doesn't really pose a threat, does he?
So, as alleged, they...
Answer that question. How did Mr. Shaver pose a threat?
Well, he could have had a concealed weapon on him.
But no effort was made to find out whether he had a concealed weapon, and he sure didn't have a rifle, given how he was dressed.
So what was the rifle that was eventually found in the room?
It was an airsoft rifle, I believe. I don't know, airsoft might be a brand. It was some type of pellet pistol used for, I guess, varmint, pest control, something along those lines.
Okay. And so it was for his job that he was using it?
Yes, there were actually 2 in the room.
And they were both rifles? They were not handguns?
Both rifles, yes.
And then later on, did you determine that the 911 caller had said it was a rifle? No mention of a gun, correct?
Yes.
All right. And Mr. Shaver, however, was not, correct? He was wearing a T-shirt and some loose shorts. Is that right?
I don't remember if they were blue, but they were basketball
Loose.
shorts.
I'm sorry, not
loose,
blue.
yes. Yes, like basketball type athletic shorts.
All right. But Mr. Brailsford said that he was afraid of and felt threatened by Mr. Shaver, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And he did not mention anything about Mr. Shaver crying and asking not to be shot, correct?
No, not that I recall.
Would either of the rifles that were in that, would they have fit in someone's pocket?
No.
Would you have been able to fit them in, like, your waistband, in those kinds of shorts, those basketball shorts?
You could fit it in your waistband, but it would be clearly visible.
All right, so it would stick out from where the shorts were?
Yes.
There was certainly an effort made to ensure that he didn't have a concealed weapon, and that effort was to secure the hallway. And as alleged, another individual listened to the same commands and was taken into custody safely. The other important point is...
So you're saying it's his fault then? Because he happened to stumble a little bit during the crawl up the hallway? So he should have got shot?
That is not what I'm saying, Your Honor. What I'm saying is this is an objective standard of what a reasonable officer should do, and the defendant appellant who is before this court is not the officer who used force, excessive force, no force was used by Officer Langley.
I mean, if you watch the video, he's the one giving the commands, correct?
The video was in part of the pleadings, but yes, as alleged, Mr. Langley was, and as in fact, was the only officer giving commands.
Okay.
And if the court were to look to its own precedent, and which is why I think it's important to do so, those cases, Diorly, Graham, all emphasize the importance of, when considering the totality of the circumstances, of whether force is reasonable, is whether a warning was issued. And
that's another part of the problem here, because it's not simply whether a warning was issued, but whether what could be described as rules of engagement are stated in severe terms multiple times.
All right, if you make a mistake, another mistake, there's a very severe possibility you're both going to get shot. Do you understand that? Yes. If you move, we're going to consider that a threat, and we are going to deal with it, and you may not survive it. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. Okay, young man, listen to my instructions and do not make a mistake. You do that again, we're shooting you. Do you understand? You do not shoot me. Then listen to my instructions. I'm trying to do it. Don't talk, listen! Hands straight up in the air. Do not put your hands down for any reason. You think you're going to fall, you're going to fall on your face. Your hands go back into the small of your back or down. We are going to shoot you. Do you understand me? Yes, sir.
Thereby arguably giving notice to the police officer who did fire the shot. This is what you're supposed to do, basically be a hair trigger. If this guy moves an inch in the wrong direction, the rules of engagement set by your client suggest he could die, which is in fact what happened.
Counsel, with respect, I think as alleged here, this is significantly different. You have someone, there was a apparent threat of somebody else with a rifle. The person who was shot didn't have a rifle. The rules of engagement are crawl on the floor, put your legs behind you, cross them, and if you make any mistake in moving toward us, you're likely to get shot. I just don't see how there isn't fair warning that when that results in the person allegedly under the command of your client getting shot 5 times while he's crawling toward the officers, that there isn't a clear precedent that the shooting, as alleged, is unconstitutional, and that the person who sets these rules of engagement can't be held liable for that if the facts prove to be true.
But again, officers have to assume that when they're responding to a situation that involves a gun, that individuals are armed.
So anyone, what if there was a kid on a tricycle in the hallway? Could they have shot that guy too?
Again, we're looking at whether it's objectively reasonable for them to consider this was a deadly threat. And, you know, if things had turned out differently, obviously there have been situations where individuals have taken long-arm rifles at an elevated position at a hotel.
Right, but this guy was on his underpants on the floor of a hallway. I mean, I could see this case being different if there was someone actually in the hotel room. That's a totally different case. But here, with a guy in his underpants on the floor of a hallway in a hotel, it's hard for me to see how this is the same as Casella.
Again, but this is a very different facts. All those cases are dealing with the officer who used force. Again, right, this is not.
But at this stage in the pleadings, I don't see how that matters, quite honestly. If an officer is the plaintiff's theory, as I understand in this case, and they'll have a chance to come up and explain this to me, but my understanding is that this guy kind of set the tone. This guy kind of set through his commands and through his actions. He kind of helped create a situation where this would be the end result. He may not have been the guy catching the touchdown, but he might have been the center hiking the ball, if I can use a sports analogy. So if it's a team effort here, if that's the allegation, and we're at the pleading stage, I don't think trying to differentiate between him being the shooter or not is going to help you much.
Talking about one of the other officers that was armed and did not shoot, we're talking about the sergeant who is giving the commands that allegedly encouraged the officer who did fire the shot to follow the rule of engagement. If you if you move them an inch out of place, then you may be shot. And that's in fact, so I think the allegation isn't simply that it's a team. The allegation is that your client knew the commands he was issuing and set up the risk of what actually happened. I mean, it may not prevail, but
as alleged, though, Mr. Shaver didn't make a mistake. So there wasn't any authorization. Even if assuming that's true, there wasn't. Mr. Shaver fully complied. So there was no authorization. Even if you accept this as and again we would disagree, characterization as an authorization to shoot on a mistake. As alleged, he did not make a mistake, and so if there was a risk, that it was one of negligence, not a one of intent, and clearly that's important at 1983
but,
stage.
Your client is alleged to have authorized pointing these deadly weapons at what would appear to be an unarmed civilian and saying things like, allegedly, if you move, if you make a mistake. And the allegation is that he tripped over a purse, or in crawling over the purse, he made a movement back toward his waist, and that's what led to the shooting pursuant to the rules of engagement. I just think that none of this may prove to be true, although I think we've all watched the video. But I just think at the pleading stage, there's more than enough in the complaint.
May it please the Court, Bill Richards on behalf of Appalese Laney Sweet, her minor children, and the estate of Daniel Shaver. The Court must affirm the District Court's denial of the motion to dismiss because, in fact, as the Court has acknowledged, I think all three judges have acknowledged, the shooting of an unarmed, compliant, surrounded, non-threatening citizen is a violation of the most clearly established constitutional law we have in American jurisprudence. And because the well-pled allegations of the Sweet plaintiff's complaint alleges detailed facts, is that according to the complaint allegations, what happened is Sergeant Langley and his entire team, when they got back to the station, they all created reports that omitted any mention of Daniel Shaver being scared, being compliant, begging not to be shot. They omitted the specific explanations of the orders that were being given by Sergeant Langley, and all of the officers reported instead that they all perceived an imminent threat at that time. So for them to suggest factually that, you know, look, we didn't anticipate this, this was kind of came out of the blue, if those were the facts, Your Honor, that it really was something completely aberrational, for example, he didn't even know that this officer had a weapon out, that may support that sort of an argument. That is not what happened here. In fact, what happened was it was Sergeant Langley who set the entire process in motion. He selected the team to go with him. He selected Officer Brailsford. He knew who Officer Brailsford was. We've given you background of Officer Brailsford in the complaint. He was a fairly young officer who had some prior problems, allegations of use of force problems. Sergeant Langley picked him to go. He picked Officer Brailsford to use the AR-15 rifle and to be 6 feet away from Daniel Shaver while he commanded Daniel Shaver, under threat of him being shot, to move forward toward the officers. He gave the commands that indicated he could shoot if there was another movement of the hand or a mere mistake. And, Your Honor, in addition to that, the complaint demonstrates, as does the video, that Sergeant Langley ordered Daniel Shaver to crawl forward over, giving him these sort of commands, over a large purse that Sergeant Langley had allowed his officers to leave right in the way. Daniel Shaver collapsed on that purse when he was shot. He was negotiating over that purse. Sergeant Langley could see it. Officer Brailsford could see it. They could all see that someone was going to have to move an arm, would likely be moving over that purse in a way that Sergeant Langley had indicated would result in a shooting.
Was the black item that's underneath him, do you know what that is?
Well, looking at it right now, it looks like a purse.
Okay. Do you remember seeing that at all?
I don't remember seeing that.
Okay. But so you didn't see that prior to me pointing it out to you?
No.
Okay. It's safe to say that the purse was there and you didn't see it at that moment when he was reaching back?
To be completely honest, I don't remember.
Okay. And he could have crawled past it. So if he's reaching back, it could be towards something like that.
Right.
Okay.
They also saw another thing. They saw his pants falling down. They were 6 feet away from him when he was shot. His pants were falling down off his backside already. His waistband was exposed, his underwear was exposed. And Sergeant Langley could not credibly or plausibly contend that he believed he still had some sort of weapon secreted in there, or that it was appropriate to even have an officer under those sorts of rules of engagement and commands with that sort of proximity with the individual crawling toward them in a position where they were going to have to raise their hand to either pull up their pants, negotiate over the purse, or do something that he had told his officers would justify shooting.
Standing there as armed backup, which we know Defendant Langley had his AR-15 out as well and was backup, makes him right there in just that an integral participant. Add on top of that that he's the one that gave all the commands. He's the one that organized the immediate action team. He's the one that selected what the officers would be doing, who would be lethal force, who would be cuffing. He decided all of that. I don't know how we can stand back and say he's not an integral participant when he was the leading participant. Maybe he wasn't the one that pulled the trigger, but he's the one that set in motion all of the circumstances and everything that happened that led to the trigger being pulled. Another thing that I would add is if we look at the overall purpose of qualified immunity, it's meant to protect police officers in their discretionary actions when they're not sure if what they're doing violates a citizen's constitutional rights. I think it's clear, and this is in my opinion, and alleged in the complaint, this is an obvious case of not shooting an unarmed man. There's several cases that cite to that. Tennessee v. Garner, that you may not seize an unarmed, non-dangerous suspect by shooting him dead. There's several other cases that I could go and cite, but clearly, based on the pleadings, Daniel Shaver did not pose a threat. He was complying with the officer's commands to the best of his ability, even though those commands were not only contradictory, but nearly impossible to follow. How you crawl with keeping your hands in the air and not putting your hands down, crawling in and of itself necessitates putting your hands down. That right there, you know, based on Sergeant Langley's commands, if he puts his hands down, he could be shot. Then he orders him to crawl, which necessitates putting his hands down.
Hands straight up in the air. Do not put your hands down for any reason. You think you're going to fall, you're going to fall on your face. Your hands go back into the small of your back or down. We are going to shoot you. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. Crawl towards me. Crawl towards me! Yes, sir. Don't
And when Daniel Shaver attempted to speak, he was told to shut up. He was not allowed to say anything. He was not allowed to clarify. He says in there, you know, I'm just trying to...
Don't talk! Listen!
Presumably do what you say or understand. He's cut off when he says, I'm just trying to, by Sergeant Langley, and says, don't talk, listen, do what I say, and tried his best to do exactly that, even though it was nearly impossible for him to do that.
On the night of the incident, hotel employee Leticia Jimenez was approached by 2 hotel guests. They informed her that they could see an individual holding what they thought was a rifle with a scope in a hotel room. The guests pointed to Shaver's room. Shaver was staying in that room. The guests agreed that the hotel staff should call the police. Jimenez asked Johnson to call the police, and then went upstairs to investigate herself. Johnson relayed some information about Shaver to the police, including his approximate age and physical features. Upon arriving at Shaver's room, Jimenez began asking questions about his pizza that he ordered. Shaver appeared confused as to why Jimenez was asking these questions. There were 2 other individuals in the room with Shaver. Shaver told Jimenez that everything was fine, and she went back downstairs. By 9:15 p.m., several Mesa Police Department, MPD, officers arrived on the scene. These officers included defendants Charles Langley, Christopher Doan, Richard Gomez, Brian Elmore, and Brian Cochran, as well as Philip Brailsford. Sergeant Langley was the commanding officer at the scene. Without speaking to the La Quinta employees about the situation, Sergeant Langley directed the MPD team to move up to Mr. Shaver's room. Sergeant Charles Langley quickly retired 4 months after the killing and moved to the safe haven of the Philippines, where he will be free from public scorn. Brailsford was charged with murder and acquitted, despite the damning video evidence against him. He was fired from his job as a police officer for violating department policies. One such violation involved his having the phrase "you're fucked" inscribed on the dust cover of the police-issued AR-15 rifle that he used to kill Shaver. Having been fired, Brailsford could not apply for a disability pension, so the ex-cop, who was let go for cause and whose improper conduct, to say the least, may end up costing the town of Mesa tens of millions of dollars in legal liabilities, was reinstated temporarily for 42 days in August 2018 for the express purpose of allowing him to apply for his disability claim. The Mesa Public Safety Personnel Retirement System then unanimously approved his application on October 8, 2018. Brailsford will receive more than $2,500 a month, or roughly $31,000 a year, for the rest of his life. Only 28 years old, he stands to collect this tidy sum, plus regular cost of living adjustments, for a possible 50-plus years.
I remember when you were happy, oh my daddy. The last time I saw you, we were swinging, with happiness ringing. I wish you could be here today, so we could play. You could tuck me in bed one more time, but you were mine. Oh, Daniel, my daddy, can you hear me? I really miss you and want you near me until we meet again, until we meet again. Just remember I love you until we meet again, until we meet again.
Until we meet again, bye.
I want two.